Okay, so I have to ask you, seriously, was I wrong for what I did? Because to this day, I still go over it in my head, wondering if I made the right choice, if I should have just kept my mouth shut. It haunts me, this whole situation with my mom, her career, and our family. I mean, how do you even begin to choose between a parent's lifelong dream and the well-being of your entire family? That's the impossible decision I was forced to make, and honestly, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Tell me honestly, if you were in my shoes, would you have done the same thing? Let me take you back to where it all began, long before everything blew up. My mom, Sarah, was a force of nature. From as far back as I can remember, she was obsessed with her military career. Not just a job, you understand, but her identity, her passion, her entire world. She joined the Army right after high school, driven by a fierce patriotism and a desire for something bigger than our small hometown could offer. She thrived in it. The discipline, the structure, the camaraderie, it all suited her perfectly. She climbed the ranks steadily, a true trailblazer in a field still dominated by men. She was smart, strategic, and incredibly dedicated. Her uniform hung in the closet like a second skin, always pressed, always immaculate. The smell of starch and parade ground dust was as familiar a scent in our home as my dad's aftershave or my grandmother's cooking. My dad, Mark, was the complete opposite. He was a quiet man, an artist by nature, though he worked as a graphic designer to pay the bills. He was gentle, patient, and deeply rooted in family life. He was the one who taught me to draw, who read me bedtime stories, who cooked dinner most nights. He never complained about my mom's deployments, her long hours, or the way her career often took precedence over everything else. He was her unwavering support system, her rock. I always admired his strength, his selflessness. He truly believed in her mission. He saw her as an inspiration, and he never once made her feel guilty for pursuing her dreams, even when it meant sacrifices for us. And then there was my grandmother, Nonna Rose. She lived with us, a matriarchal figure with a sharp wit and an even sharper sense of tradition. She was the glue that held our domestic life together, especially when Mom was away. Nonna cooked, cleaned, and largely raised me in those crucial early years, filling the gaps my mom's demanding career inevitably created. She loved my mom fiercely, but I could always sense a quiet tension, an unspoken expectation that perhaps a woman's true place was not on the battlefield but in the home. It wasn't malicious, just a generational difference, a subtle undercurrent that sometimes pulled at the seams of our otherwise solid family unit. Growing up, I was immensely proud of my mom. When she came home from deployments, she was a hero. She'd bring back stories, sometimes censored for my young ears, and souvenirs from far-off lands. Her medals gleamed in a display case, each one a testament to her bravery and dedication. Her colleagues respected her, and her superiors saw her as someone destined for greatness. She was always talking about her next promotion, her next assignment, her next challenge. She was aiming for general, that was her ultimate goal. It was a huge aspiration, a monumental task, and she pursued it with singular focus. She'd always tell me, "Hard work pays off, honey. Never give up on your dreams, no matter how big they seem." I took that to heart, I really did. I saw her as an example of what a woman could achieve, breaking barriers and reaching for the stars. But as I got older, I started to notice the cracks, the hidden costs of her ambition. Dad looked tired, perpetually so. He'd shoulder the brunt of everything: my school plays, my doctor's appointments, the leaky faucet, the broken car. He never said a word, but his silence spoke volumes. Nonna Rose, too, grew frailer with each passing year, her once boundless energy slowly diminishing. She still managed the household, but the effort became more visible, the sighs more frequent. I remember one evening, I must have been about 12, Mom was on a year-long deployment, and Dad was struggling with a huge work deadline. Nana Rose had fallen and sprained her ankle. Dad was trying to manage my schoolwork, his job, and Nana's care, all while cooking and cleaning. I found him in the kitchen late one night, just sitting at the table, staring into space, a half-eaten sandwich forgotten beside him. He looked utterly defeated. I sat with him, and he just put his arm around me, squeezing me tight, not saying anything. It was then I understood, really understood, the weight he carried. The biggest turning point came when Nana Rose got sick. It wasn't sudden. It was a slow, insidious decline. Alzheimer's. At first, it was just forgetfulness, misplaced keys, repeated stories. Then it became more serious confusion, disorientation, moments of pure terror when she didn't recognize us. It was heartbreaking to watch, devastating for all of us. Dad, ever the caretaker, took on even more responsibility. He researched treatments, managed her appointments, and spent hours just talking to her, trying to anchor her in reality, even as it slipped away. He tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but it was clear he was drowning. He'd lost weight, his artistic spark seemed to dim, and the perpetual worry etched lines around his eyes. Mom was away, of course. She was stationed overseas, working on a major strategic initiative, something that was considered vital to national security. She called regularly, expressing her sympathy, her concern, but her calls always seemed to end with a mention of her work, the importance of her mission, the critical phase she was in. She kept saying she'd be home as soon as she could, but as soon as she could seemed to stretch indefinitely. I remember one phone call where Dad, usually so composed, finally broke. He wasn't yelling, but his voice was tight with desperation. He told her he couldn't do it alone anymore, that Nana needed more than he could provide, that we needed her. Mom listened, her voice softening, but then she said something about duty, about serving her country, about this being the culmination of her career. The call ended shortly after, with an unspoken tension hanging in the air. I was 17 at this point, old enough to see the full scope of the situation, old enough to feel the pressure mounting. I tried to help Dad as much as I could, but I was still in high school, preparing for college. I felt caught in the middle, watching my dad slowly buckle under an unbearable load, and my grandmother fading away, while my mom, our hero, was hundreds of thousands of miles away, chasing her ultimate dream. Then came the news that would change everything. Mom was being considered for a promotion to Brigadier General. It was her dream, the pinnacle of her career, what she had worked her entire life for. The announcement came with a caveat. If she got the promotion, it would mean another 5 years of intense commitment, likely more overseas deployments, and even less time at home. It was a clear fork in the road. She could accept the promotion and continue her path to ultimate glory, or she could decline it, effectively ending her chances of reaching general and potentially taking a less demanding role that would allow her to be home more. The family discussion, if you can even call it that, was excruciating. Mom came home for a brief leave, radiant with the possibility of her promotion, but also visibly torn. Dad, looking utterly exhausted, laid out the facts. Nana Rose now required 24/7 care. She couldn't be left alone for even a moment. Her memory was almost completely gone, and she often became agitated and confused. He himself was on the verge of burnout. My college applications were due, and I needed help navigating that process. help he was too overwhelmed to provide. He didn't demand she give up her career, but he painted a stark, undeniable picture of our reality. He essentially said, "We need you, Sarah. We need you here. We can't do this without you." Mom sat there, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Her dream, her lifelong ambition, was within reach, but her family was crumbling. She looked at Dad, then at me, then at Nana, who was sitting quietly in her armchair, humming a tune from her youth, completely oblivious to the silent battle unfolding around her. I could see the struggle in Mom's eyes, the pull between her two worlds. She loved us, I knew she did. But her career, her duty, it was ingrained so deeply within her that it felt like an intrinsic part of her being. And this is where I had to make my choice. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have stayed silent, letting your mom make her own decision, or would you have intervened, knowing the cost to your family? Would you have sacrificed her dream for your family's immediate needs? I really want to know what you think. I couldn't stay silent. I just couldn't. I looked at my dad, his face etched with worry, his shoulders slumped. I looked at Nana, her eyes vacant, lost in her own world. And I thought about all the years Dad had sacrificed, all the times he'd held the fort alone, all the times Nana had stepped in. My mom had always taught me to fight for what I believed in, to stand up for what was right, and in that moment, what was right was protecting my family. I took a deep breath and I spoke. My voice, usually quiet and reserved, was surprisingly strong. I told her, not angrily, but with a raw honesty that I think shocked us all, especially her. I reminded her of every single time Dad had been there for us, every sacrifice he had made. I recounted the countless hours Nana had spent raising me, filling the void left by her deployments. I told her about the nights Dad had cried silently, thinking I was asleep. I told her how scared I was, seeing Dad so broken, seeing Nana slip away. I told her that she had dedicated her life to her country, and that was admirable, but that she also had a duty to her family, a duty that had been neglected for far too long. I said, "Mom, you've always taught me about duty and sacrifice. Well, our family needs you now. We are your duty. Dad is breaking. Nana is fading. We need you to choose us, just this once." The silence in the room after I finished was deafening. Dad looked at me with wide eyes, a mix of shock and gratitude. Mom's face, usually so composed, crumpled. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring the fierce determination I had seen there for so long. She didn't shout, she didn't argue. She just sat there, processing my words, letting the full weight of them sink in. It was like a dam had broken. All the unspoken truths, all the suppressed emotions, all the hidden resentments, had finally burst forth through my outburst. Later that evening, after Nana was asleep and Dad had gone to bed, exhausted, Mom came to my room. She sat on the edge of my bed, and for the first time in a very long time, she just listened. She didn't defend herself, didn't make excuses. She just listened as I reiterated everything, my voice softer now, but still firm. I told her I loved her, that I was proud of her, but that we couldn't take it anymore. We needed her. The next morning, she made her decision. She called her commanding officer and declined the promotion. I remember hearing snippets of the conversation from the living room, family obligations, personal reasons. Regretfully, it wasn't easy for her. I could see the pain in her eyes, the grief of letting go of a dream she had chased for decades. It was like watching a part of her die. But there was also a profound sense of relief, a lightness in her step I hadn't seen in years. She didn't leave the military entirely, not at first. She transitioned to a less demanding role, one that allowed her to be based closer to home, with regular hours and no deployments. It was a significant step down from the trajectory she was on, but it was enough. She started taking Nana to her appointments, helping Dad with the household, being present for my college visits and application process. The change wasn't instantaneous, but slowly, gradually, our family started to heal. Dad's shoulders straightened, the lines of worry on his face softened, and I even saw him pick up his sketch pad again. Mom, while sometimes wistful about her lost ambition, rediscovered the joys of everyday family life. She started cooking dinner, something she hadn't done regularly in years. She even started attending Nana's weekly reminiscence therapy sessions, holding her hand, gently guiding her through memories that were no longer fully there. It was hard, really hard, for her to adjust. I think she felt lost for a while, without the constant adrenaline of her military life. But she found new purpose, new meaning in being there for us. She learned to appreciate the quiet moments, the mundane tasks, the simple act of being present. Nana Rose eventually passed away peacefully a year later, surrounded by all of us, her family. It was heartbreaking, but at least Mom was there, holding her hand, telling her how much she loved her, truly present in those final moments. So, was I wrong? I still wonder. Did I steal her dream, force her to choose between her passion and her family? Or did I save my family, and in doing so, perhaps even save her, from a path that would have ultimately left her alone, successful but empty? I don't know if there's a right answer. All I know is that our family is whole again, stronger than ever. My mom is still a force of nature, but now her strength is also directed inward, towards the people who need her most. She even volunteers at a local veterans organization, using her vast experience to help others, finding a different kind of fulfillment. And I went to college, and I'm now pursuing my own dreams, confident that no matter what, I have a strong, united family to come home to. If you were on my side, if you think I did the right thing, please like this video, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.